and welcome to Book Lounge by Libby. My name is Joe, and I'm so happy you're here. This is the first episode. It's technically the second episode, but it's like part 2 of episode 1. Anyway, welcome to season 3 of Book Lounge by Libby. This is our second day of Dazzling Debut Week. So on Monday, if you missed it, go and check it out. We had a conversation with some amazing debut authors talking about their experience breaking in to the world of publishing, how long they were working on their books, all sorts of interesting and unique ways into publishing. So go check that out if you haven't already. And then today, my wonderful friend Amy is here from the Book Gang podcast to give us some debut recommendations. Amy, hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. You know I love to be over here in this space with you.
Oh, I'm always happy to have you here, and I will take any excuse to have you on the show, but you specifically are who comes to mind when I think debuts, because you and I both have an extreme passion for debut novels. Is that fair to say? I think we have an extreme passion for debut novels.
Yes. Debuts are definitely my lane. And it was funny because I was thinking about last year in particular, I put together like a slideshow on my Instagram to talk about the experience of interviewing debut novelists. We had 21 debut novelists come through the show, which was the highest volume that we had ever had. But I felt like last year it was exceptional for debuts. It was astounding, the level of talent. I feel like we have many book twos coming to us this year from those really strong contenders, but it was just fascinating. And it goes back to the season with which writers were in. So a lot of the debuts that we've been enjoying over these last few years came out of the pandemic. And many of those writers had day jobs and they were, juggling lots of other things. And then suddenly the world is paused. And it's interesting how that led to some of the best books that we were able to get our hands on because they really could hone in on creativity. There was nothing really essentially to lose at that point to explore that creativity, right? And it was just an incredibly magical season for creativity for some people. And then some of us didn't move out of our bed for a year and we're kind of a sloth. And that's okay too. I just want to say that as well.
Right. Remember, none of us are responsible for what happened in the pandemic. If you were, I worked from bed for like the first month, I think, because I was just like, what's happening? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with the world? But no, I love that. And I think we should get in a little inside baseball before we dive into our recs to talk about it. But thinking about debuts, the world of publishing has changed in such a beautiful way that we are welcoming so many more voices. There is so much unique content happening. And I think to your point, because of the pandemic, we saw people not afraid to take that shot. Either people who were laid off and were in a position that the only thing they had time to, the only thing they could do was write. That's what they did. Or on the flip side, we all needed a break. Not all of us were building complex Animal Crossing islands, though many of us were. So I think there's definitely something about it. I think, as you said, it's your lane. Same for me. I gravitate toward debut. My peek behind the curtain when it comes to looking at books, especially for our monthly book pick episodes here, I go into it knowing nothing. Almost all of my picks I have judged by the cover, and I start to read the description and I go, ooh, perfect. But I don't even dive too deep. And then you're seeing me read that description together in full a lot of times for the first time that I'm actually processing it. I do the skim to go, oh yes, this one over this one. I want to add that to my list. Like it's, you're getting very genuine reactions from me. But I think you could quadruple that when it comes to an author interview. So I do all my research, I prep all my notes, I pull all these things together, I read the book, I, come up with questions, and then it's go time. And that's when you find out that you're their first interview.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't look for other interviews. That's like my thing. I don't want anything to color my take on it. I don't want anyone else's questions to come through. I don't want anyone because the other thing is what kind of day were they having? I don't want any opinions of the person other than what I think of their work. That's all I want when I go in. At least that's my approach. And then all of a sudden you're the first interview and you go, oh. What's that experience like for you, Amy?
Yeah.
Because
So, okay. So since we're talking inside baseball,
yeah,
I love all the authors that I talk to.
yes.
I don't usually enjoy as much authors that have multiple books out because there is a weariness. They are doing this because it's required by the publisher. They know how it goes. There's almost like a canned response. We're kind of going through that list of questions that they've done. It's a lot like when I used to blog and cover movies, right? And the actors and actresses are doing the same canned pitch over and over and over. And it's really, really hard to get something exceptional or different that you can use on your show.
Yeah,
With
it's
debuts,
almost
though,
it's
yeah,
almost what's birthed like what we're seeing with how Tube handles celebrities on book tour, that like here's Vogue's take on questions, and instead we like looked at your history of tweet, like because everyone got so tired of that canned response, but it's still not broken. Like it's either up to us to take that challenge on or be like, I'm gonna
right.
find my other niche, which is in this case debut.
And you just can't replicate the level
You
of
can't.
enthusiasm. You can't replicate the nervousness, that energy that they have when they come to talk about their very first book. And to me, because so much of the work that I used to do, I had to go through media training and prepare. I don't mind the extra effort and the push that I get to do. In fact, I find it like makes my brain like light up a little bit to be a part of someone's successful interview and try and massage the
Absolutely.
message and try to get what we need out of a show. And when someone tells me that I'm their first interview, it really helps. But I will say that one thing that I've learned that really a lot of debut authors struggle with, and if you're a writer, this may be helpful, is that elevator pitch to start is often the biggest hurdle with getting our episodes off the air. And so what I do now is I ask them to not come with an elevator pitch. I don't want to hear your pitch because my responsibility as the podcaster is to be the person that pitches it. It's my responsibility. I asked you as my guest to share your writing journey with me. And my responsibility then is to get as many copies of that book sold for you. So I treat it like they are a client, like I'm doing something very special for them. And I write a pitch about how I felt about that book. And so there's not really the ability for me to necessarily do a huge book review show. We do one like for our Patreon, but we don't do it on our main show. But
Yeah.
I see it as twofold. Like, one, is this book for me? And what specifically will this reader like about that book? And maybe they hear that pitch and say, hey, this book isn't for me. But I cannot necessarily rely upon a writer to give the pitch that's desired for us to actually sell that book. And they're
Right.
nervous and it's really
Right.
hard. So you really do have to, kind of help them through that process. And I feel so lucky. And I feel like it's why those interviews become so memorable to both of us when we get through
Yes.
to the other side. Do you feel that way?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. You and I have talked off mic about your process now of avoiding the description, which I have tried to internalize. And thankfully, in the times that I would go and be guilty of it, we reformatted the show, so I'm not often interviewing people about their book anymore. It's more my approach that wriggles in themes of the book. So yeah, I adapted it as well, but you're right. It's so easy to grab that first, like, oh, the easiest first question to write when I was starting back in 2022 on the show was to go, so for those who may not know, what's your book about? And sometimes you could see them read the like boilerplate, what they were what they worked up with the pub department and, came together with. But it's so much more fulfilling now to see how they react to me. The other thing I want to take a step back to your point about authors with multiple books. I think the times that you can make that more exciting are the times where I tend to be getting them. They're here live because they're on their tour and they're going to a library. So I feel like authors who tend to be engaged with the free public library events tend to like they're here because they want to see the people. Like they love us as the readers And those, whether it's like book 2 or book 28, different energy than, right, like this is the 4th book, they do the obligated high level media outlets, but they're not touring, they're, I guess it's like when they want me to come and moderate for them, they want a conversation, versus when they're like, I come, I do a reading, I read my 4 bullet points, I don't take questions, and then the signing line starts. Like that's kind of like the balance to your point. So I definitely feel that. I think it just kind of depends on what the author's energy is.
Yeah. And
But
that you really
debut,
can't determine on the day of either. And,
no.
I like behind the scenes, a lot of times we'll get an
Yeah.
email like a 3 a.m., the next day, like, do you think maybe we should do it again? Or, and I'm like, nope, nope, that was
Nope.
it. Like, my
We're
friend, I
done.
have given you all that I can give you today. But, I do get it, because then you start to second guess yourself, or they say, oh, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to tell this one thing about my book. Would you be able to pull this? And sometimes there's this huge flurry. And when I first started, it was so nerve wracking. Our editing tools, we were manually by hand, like clipping everything through Audacity. We didn't have any tools. And so, it's no big deal. Like if somebody was like at the end, they were like, oh, you know what? Can we go back? I'm going to tell you about this other thing. And we're like, wait, we aren't a team. Like we're just
Right.
2 moms. Okay. And on
I do not have the skill to cut that
I
and
can't
move
change
everything.
whatever
I will
happened
lose
here.
it all.
It has transpired. We did our best, And so that
Exactly.
would really I wrestled with that, because obviously you want everyone to always sound their very best. But I can't, if
Yes.
you don't give your very best, or you're not prepared, or you're having a bad day, it happens to all of us.
Right.
But I think one of the things that I really encourage people is like, bring your energy. Like this is like theater kid stuff, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
bring
Energy.
your theater kid in, right? There are days that
Yeah.
I come on and I'm like, I've had the worst health day of my life, and you would never know. Like, it's just so funny. I interviewed a debut novelist, and he was like, Amy Clark was shimmering. And I'm like, I had a dislocated shoulder on that day, and I still like hopped on, and I was like, because that is what is required to get the show that you need. But a lot of
We've
people are not
recorded
going to do that.
together. We've recorded together while I'm still like post-surgery
Yeah.
swollen, can't breathe out of one side of my face. I'm like, okay, it's time to make the donuts.
Yeah.
Like
I don't know. There's
go.
like a Gen X work ethic that I have. I think that I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like my dad would go and work at a factory, no matter what the circumstance was. So I just feel like that's my little like come in your room and record an hour. Like certainly you can do that. We all can
Certainly
do it.
I can put too much blush on and hit record.
That's right.
Like
we got this.
That's all it has to take. But I'm with you. Like the millennial in me that's the like, I want everyone to be happy. And I love what I do. Also balanced with like my mom always going, that kind of like boomer mom to be like, just do your best. I'm like, okay, let's go do our best today. And right, it's scary, but I'm with you. The debut energy is unparalleled, because when you see that they're a little scared, when you know that you're one of their first interviews, and then it's always at the end that they let you, like, you get through the whole thing, and then the red light turns off, and they go, oh, that was my first podcast, or that was my first interview, period. And you're like, okay, well, now it makes sense. But it's such a fun challenge.
Yeah.
I can't forget like a handful of some of my favorite moments where that happened. I bring up the book so often because it was incredible, but also because same thing, Erin E. Adams for Jackal. That's one of my all-time favorite interviews. And, for her to be like, oh, this was one of the first whatever we're doing for the book, or, it's, yeah, there's just something about it. It's the same thing that when you're talking to small pubs or smaller pubs, I think it has a similar feeling of just the like, we've got 6 books out because we had a dream and we're making it happen. Like, I think that's just as exciting. So
yeah. And I will say too, and maybe you speak to this,
yeah,
but I also have had frustrating experiences where, because that debut novelist clams up, or they're not willing to excavate what they are presenting, they're not ready necessarily
Yeah.
to tell their story, there have been a couple of very memorable episodes. And you have to keep in mind, I mean, when someone is doing an episode like this, I know that I can speak that each one of those episodes takes our team about 20 hours because you count in reading time, editing time, prepping the interview. Like I send all the questions ahead of time. We also record a spoiler episode with every author. So we ask them to stick around and talk about the back half of their book. So that's the whole thing. And then you have the recording time, then everything after, all the social media shares. There's a lot of moving components with it.
Right.
And, you know, so you devote 20 hours to something, and then that person comes on and they're really not ready to talk about their book. And there have been times I've gotten off here and I cried. Like I bawled my eyes out because it's 20 hours of my time. And there's no way to say, hey, I'm not going to air this because that's unfair. Right. But also at the same time, it's like you weren't ready to do this. You weren't ready to tell your story. You're unwilling to like give me anything. Sometimes too, like with people who are media trained, if they are newscasters or anchors, they're used to doing clips, like bites, like a sentence or two, and they won't go past it. They know exactly where that period will end. And that is so frustrating. And I take it so hard. Like it's like the most depressing day because it's like we could have done something really incredible. Like this would have connected
if you like
much
gave
emotionally with
yourself
our readers.
over to it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But not unwilling to tap in. That's really a difficult process because you can't get those 20 hours back. You can't redo it. Right. You can't not air it. Right. So it's hard.
I think of the early days when I started back when it was Professional Book Nerds and we were recording in Zoom and editing in Audacity. And there was no video. And, you know, I would have like 3 to 6 different tracks, depending on how many people were in the episode. And the way that I would like comb through and be like, well, I have to take out every inhale and I have to reduce every pause and like all of those things that seemed so, and like, honestly, video has been freeing because you can see the general energy, like I guess like while there's less to hide behind, there's also more the like, if it's me, you can look and be like, Joe must have been having an off day, but at least you have the context if you're watching. But to your actual question, there are a lot of episodes, especially in those audio only days, that we may have recorded for an hour and a half, and that episode is 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And that could be me being picky about the way I phrased something. It could also just be the like, and this is across the board. This is where we step out of talking about debuts. This was my experience in a lot of different places where you would just kind of be like, well, I can't use that. Or, oh, wow, here's like a whole chunk where you went on a tangent that has nothing to do with anything. And it didn't take us anywhere. It didn't bring your energy up. You're still not comfortable. It's hard. Thankfully, even when it was audio only, we still always had video on, and I am disarming. Like it helps to be able to make people comfortable. But right, when they live in those sound bites, ooh, it's tough. Yeah. I mean, I am very lucky. I get to work a lot with our local library here that does amazing tour stops for authors. And I've gotten to, host a lot of incredible people live. And I just did an event with Steve Kavanaugh a couple weeks ago. And he's like the dream because he falls right in the middle. So I have this thing, and my mother laughs, and this is what she asks after she asks, oh, who did you record with today? Were they a 1, 2, or a 3? And the 1 is is exactly what you said. They go to the period. And that could be the nerves. That could be they don't really have an answer. It could be any number of things. 2 is the they go just a little bit beyond. So if you ask them for a sentence, they give you half a paragraph. And then 3 is the I think of my conversation with Janet Ivanovich. I barely finished the question and she's like, oh, I have an answer for that. And 4 stories beyond that. And all of those are delightful. It's just a little different with what you do with it. Mm-hmm. When Jason Reynolds was here in Cleveland live last summer for our conference Digipalooza. I interviewed him live on stage. I think the way I described that conversation was all I had to do was turn the car on, and he drove us where we wanted to go. So I just had to like occasionally steer us like back in the direction I wanted it to head. But you know, so he fell somewhere in that like 2.5, 3 scale where it was like very, you know, I guess the way there's also like the 4 where it's like, oh, I'll kind of answer your question, and then I have a whole plan of what I want to talk about. So maybe that's 4, but I rarely see that. But so he was just the like, oh, that's a great question. Here we go. Here's what we're moving into. And a thought about that. And that's always my favorite spot to be in, because to your point, we may spend 20 hours prepping for a single episode. And I love to come in with like printed cards when I'm doing a live, and then to just immediately tuck them in the chair, because that person is so responsive. What I prepped doesn't matter. And I know you are the oldest daughter energy.
Oh, so strong.
I am the youngest son. So I love when I do all that work and it's like, oh, you just want to chat with me? Done. I can active listen my ass off.
No, and I cannot.
You know.
I cannot do that. I can listen, but it's funny because, you know, maybe women who are listening of a certain age with menopause, I cannot keep anything in my head anymore the way that I used to, because the brain fog is so heavy with it. And it's funny, not haha, but a lot of my writers are also in this midlife season. And so it's me trying to keep the wheels on the bus for them as well, because they're like, I'm sorry, I don't know if I even answered that. It's fine. If I don't have that template, also, you know, I'm sure you're the same way. I read so many books and it's hard to retain.
Oh, yeah.
And so now I've started writing a very, very detailed, you know, pitch for the book, for the show, but also the spoilers at the end. Like, what do I need to remember about this for the spoilers? Because, you know, if I don't remember how it ends, you know, and the worst is like when you get like a mystery novelist and they're like, who did you think it was? And you're like, I don't remember a single character.
I couldn't even tell you where the book was set. I mean, for me, the moment it says the end in Libby,
you're like,
I don't remember. Like, I haven't even returned it yet, and I've forgotten everything about it. So
exactly. I mean, we're human. We can only do so much. It's not that all stories are not valuable. They are, and that's why you were picked. No. But at the same time, it's like, if I don't have those notes for myself, and because I know someone's nervous and they like to prep, and I actually like tell them, because it's so ridiculous, the extent of the prep work, because, you know, that's just all this daughter stuff. But when I send it to them, I'm like, feel free to use these as like example questions to pitch to bookshops if they're helpful to you, or if you're going to speak at the library and you want some training wheels for the person who's hosting you. If you feel comfortable with this message, feel free to recycle my interview questions, because I want you to sound your best at everything that you're doing, not just here. So it's so much fun. Nobody knows about this except you, Joe. So like, that's why I'm so glad we're friends.
And I'm number one, so glad we're friends. 2, I hope Inside Baseball is exciting for everyone, because it's been a joy to talk about. Yeah, right.
You're like, okay, move on, please.
Yeah, right. I'm like, all right, listeners, there's timestamps in the show notes. Just jump to the recommendation.
Yeah.
Or this is where I say like, oh, Andrew, maybe go back and put in at the beginning, like, there, just a note on screen that says they're about to talk for like 20 minutes. Jump here
like
if you want to get to the rest.
10 hours
3
later.
hours later. Yeah, right. Put in a SpongeBob card. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah.
I'm so with you. I think it's fascinating what we get to do, and I always feel lucky and grateful. And I love the research aspect. I love to create all those notes and have something to jump back to. So while yes, I tend to lean into my skill of, oh, you want to talk about this? Okay. It's always there, like flashing at me like, hey, just in case, remember I'm right here when you need to gently guide us back the path we're going.
I love it.
But we should probably give them some reads, shouldn't we?
Let's do it.
I guess. Okay. So I tasked Amy and myself with picking a handful of debuts to recommend to all of you. I gave myself the extra homework of not doing my usual where I go, here's a list where it's all whatever I'm mood reading at the moment that I love. So I was unique. And we did stick to from 2023 to 2025. So that, or 2026, like there may be some debuts from this year, there may be, but they are recent debuts. So y'all don't have to, we're not giving you anything that you might not have seen at least.
Well, I did pick
recently.
one from 2022. Is that okay, Joe?
Yes, no, Amy, get a new book now.
I know,
yes.
I'm like, no, we're going to promote this guy. He's awesome.
I also probably could have said 2022. Honestly, that email was a lifetime ago at this point.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention to the parameters here.
Hey, that's okay. You, of all people, get a free pass from me. But I'm going to kick us off. My first pick is a horror debut from 2025. Because who would I be if not bringing a horror story to the mix? This is Myra by Nikki Gonzalez. It's an eerie, hypnotic debut about friendship, desire, and memory set against the sultry backdrop of Florida's swamplands. It was longlisted for the Center for Fiction's first novel prize. And just the description. It's been years since Ingrid has heard from her childhood best friend, Myra, a fearless rebel who fled her hometown of Hialeah, a Cuban neighborhood just west of Miami, for college in the Northeast. But when Myra calls out of the blue to invite Ingrid to a weekend getaway at a house in the Everglades, she impulsively accepts. From the moment Ingrid sets out, danger looms. The directions are difficult. She's out of reach of cell service. And as she dives deeper in the Everglades, the wet maw of the swamp threatens to swallow her whole. But once Ingrid arrives, Myra is, in many ways, just as she remembers, with her sharp tongue and effortless seductive beauty, still thumbing her nose at the world. Before they can fully settle into familiar intimacy of each other's company, their reunion is spoiled by the reemergence of past disagreements and the unexpected presence of Myra's new boyfriend, Benji. The trio spend their hours eating lavish meals and exploring the labyrinthine house, which holds as much mystery as the swamp itself. Indoors and on the grounds, time itself seems to expand, and Ingrid begins to lose a sense of the outside world and herself. Against this disquieting setting where lizards dart in and out of porches and alligators peek from dark waters, Gonzalez weaves a surreal, unforgettable story about the dizzying power of early friendship and the lengths we'll go to earn love and acceptance, even at the risk of losing ourselves entirely. Now, this is where I have to jump in and say, like, this may not be for everyone. If you pull it up on Goodreads, the reviews will tell you that. But I think that is purely because Gothic horror is almost never for everyone. The majority of people don't seem to understand it. I don't know. It's just like it. People don't like longing, and Gothics are longing. Like, especially Gothic haunted house adjacent. Like they just, I don't know. I feel like a lot of general readers don't understand it. So if this gets popped in front of like the wrong audience, it's just like, I don't get it, you know.
Yeah.
But it has all the trappings of a me pick. It's weird. It's a little claustrophobic. The haunting is past trauma from a toxic friendship. I also like the flashbacks to the past, the isolation of the house, being in the Everglades. And while it isn't like straight up a haunted house Gothic, it's got all of the components of one. Weird internal conversations, odd choices, a breakdown of our point of view reality. I just liked it. The audiobook is about 7 hours and is narrated by Frankie Corzo, who was one of the narrators for Bochica by Carolina Flores Sorchario, sorry on pronunciation, which is another 2025 debut that I was considering for this list. But in an effort to not have all horror, I moved to just a cheeky mention. And as always, all of the titles we mentioned in the episode will be in the show notes. And then on this same vein, I would also recommend the debut Hemlock by Melissa Falaveno. It's the same kind of like, it's a Gothic. That one deals with addiction and alcoholism and the missing death of a parent kind of thing. Unlikable characters, you know. So again, all of the things that like, oh, if you just go look at a review of it, if it's not for you, you're not going to like it. And you'll see a bunch of people who felt the same way. But when it is for you, you'll love it. So yeah, that was Myra, Nikki Gonzalez.
It sounds like it would be for me. I realize now that I read a lot of Gothic literature, but I don't know if
Mhm.
I always recognized like,
Oh,
oh,
same.
this is where we're supposed to be with it. But I had hosted Erin Crosby Eckstein for her debut, Junie, which is a
Yeah.
modern, like kind of gothic story. And it was so wonderful because she came back as a school teacher and I had her teach a class on gothic literature to our listeners. And it was so helpful to me. She's inspired me to pick up Jane Eyre. We're going to be reading it for our classics club. And she really got me like better in the mindset of what to expect, why those things happen. And when you say that maybe some readers don't always gravitate towards it, I feel like it's one of those things where you have to call things out. You know, same with literary fiction. I'm
That's
like,
exactly
it's
it. Yeah.
character driven. Like, what does that mean? Right. And if we don't know those things, we don't know what we like or what we don't like. And so we really need to
Absolutely.
give people that information that tells us like, okay, this is a that I like or I don't like it.
Yeah, it's the heads up almost of like that's why I tend to start things with this is a weird one. If you like the weird ones, which I know I can count on you always, Amy, for a weird one, but like when you call it out and right when you say, well, this is gothic, so you're not going to like the characters. They're
Right.
going to become unreliable at some point. The world as you know it is going to fall apart around you, but also simultaneously go on exactly as it's always been. Like I don't know. I This is also where I would say like if you have never read We Have Always Lived in the Castle or Haunting of Hill House, read either of those and then you'll know what every perfect gothic should have it. Like because if you can get through those which lack today's sense of like brilliant books, don't get me wrong, but like they lack the levity that even gothics have today just because of our modern sensibilities. Like, yeah,
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, I am going to change gears a little bit
please.
and I'm a little notes heavy. So I apologize to anyone who doesn't want to hear me read my notes, but you've heard this. I have to do it this way. So, anyways, we're going to be talking about The Sunflower Boys by Sam Walkman. This book came out last year. And I had asked Sam about this because I'm like, is this because you wanted me to know this or your team wanted me to know this? But on his bio, it says that he was born in 2000. Okay. So this is a kid who is the same age roughly as my child. And he has already written a book and tutored English at a primary school in Ukraine before penning this book. So I am just astounded and I love
What are
to
these
support young
children
talent.
doing?
I know he's amazing. This book is exceptional. And I will say that if you care about Goodreads reviews, this is like almost nearing a 5. So it's an excellent pick. And we picked it for our April book club. So this story is a coming of age story and it doubles as a war chronicle and it's set against the backdrop of the invasion of Ukraine. But in 2022, that's where the timeline is. So this isn't a historical fiction pick. 12-year-old Artem offers a hauntingly clear-eyed voice to this story where he has formed a fast friendship with his best friend, Victor, enveloping him in the typical rhythms of tweenhood. So we're following them on horror movie marathons and sleepovers, idyllic bike rides together. And as Victor begins to acknowledge Artem's feelings for him, he makes a sudden choice basically to end their friendship. And this decision leaves him facing some very lonesome school days. And it's a situation that really tugged at my heartstrings. And that is what I believe the story to be about, a book of longing, of queer awakening, and that was essentially what the story was. But in this absence of all of that happening, Artem begins helping on his grandfather's sunflower farm and becomes enamored with sketching while longing for his father, who is across continents, where he is working as a roofer because he desires to give him a better life and he cannot make the amount of money that he needs to support them in their own country as a cardiologist. But the thunder of war begins to shatter his world in an instant. Fear, grief, and loss spell out a new reality. And in this second half of the book, we are following Artem and his younger brother, Yuri, as they try to flee and find their father and reunite with him. And what I will say about this book is, as an American, I was very unfamiliar with Ukraine's history. And what he does so well is he embeds a really compelling fireside chat with their grandfather, where he's explaining this whole history of Ukraine in a few short pages, but it is a very impactful few short pages that gives us as US readers an opportunity to really understand the citizens, the what they have endured, things that are going well beyond headline news. And I was so moved by this book. I remember finishing it and just being astounded that someone this young could write something like this, that he would have the insight to do this. And it was just one of those magical book experiences where I feel completely different after I finished that book. And it was such a joy to record an interview with Sam and to talk through, what he's doing for Ukrainian youth. He's still trying to help kids come over here, get to the States. And it's just so compelling. And he's such a special young man. And I hope that everyone will get it. It's up for a Lambda Award for gay fiction this year. It's astounding to be this young and doing something so exceptional.
That sounds incredible. And I think you made the perfect point when it comes to like literature is another one that needs a warning. I'm the one who usually needs the warning. I need to hear people who I trust like you tell me about lit books, because I tend to go like, is it a book club book? Is it my eyes roll to the back of my head. Oh, this is important. We should read it. That's why it's literary fiction. Like that's what I turn to. But then I go like, oh no, these are just like important, impactful stories. Because if it wasn't 2022, it'd be historical fiction. Like,
right. Yeah. And this one is great for readers who have very short amounts of time to read, because it's told in 100 chapters, but sometimes there's 3 sentences to the chapter, or there's a page.
That.
And because it is so emotional and you are going on such a harrowing journey with these 2 young men trying to get back to their dad, it's nice because you can like set it down, maybe read a page or 2, think about it, come back to it. It's all of these 100 chapters are also tied to artwork. So you are following the art as it progresses too, as he progresses through his art. It's just a beautiful rendering of coming of age. And when I asked him like, oh, did you know that this was, the book that you were going to do? And no, he really thought it was going to be the book that I thought I was reading when I first started it. But then Ukraine, all of that happened. And it changed his story, just like it changes the lives of the children that were involved with this. So highly, highly recommend.
Oh, well, that's going to be hard to follow, but I'm playing your game as well. I'm jumping to a different gear now. My lists are usually so cohesive because I was in a mood. But I know I have mentioned this next book a lot, including in a book picks when it was published in the US in 2024. But this whole world is a joy. And again, it's not a pick for everyone, but if you're into cozy magical realism and want to try literature in translation, which I know I evangelize, this might be for you. And that is the debut, The Dazzling Dream Department Store, and the books around it. So The Dazzling Dream Department Store is by Mai Lee. This was published in the US in July of 2024. And it is for fans of magical realism and the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series. It's a cozy fantasy debut. So what if there was a store that sold dreams? Which would you buy? And who might you become when you wake up? In a mysterious town hidden in our collective subconscious, there's a department store that sells dreams. Day and night, visitors, both human and animal, shuffle in to purchase their latest adventure. Each floor specializes in a specific type of dream: childhood memories, food dreams, ice skating, dreams of stardom. Flying dreams are almost always sold out. Some seek dreams of loved ones who have passed. For Penny, an enthusiastic new hire working at the Dazzling is an opportunity of a lifetime. As she uncovers the workings of this whimsical world, she bonds with a cast of unforgettable characters, including Dazzling, the flamboyant and wise owner, Baby Nap Rockabye, a famous dream designer, Maxim, a nightmare producer, and the many customers who dream to heal, dream to grow, and dream to flourish. It's a captivating story that will leave a lingering, magical feeling in readers' minds. This is the first book in a best-selling duology for anyone exhausted from the reality of their daily life. it's dreamy and nostalgic while also being fresh. It makes you miss the feeling of reading books when you were young, if that makes sense. Like,
Mm,
like that's the kind of nostalgia it made me feel. At the same time, I think it's an important conversation about how we all go about processing grief and trauma and how we move on. And if you like it, of course, you can enjoy the second book, Return to the Gallagher Dream Department Store. And this year's US release from Mai as well was called Break Room, which was in one of my recent book picks. It's just recently out. So yeah, I don't know. I think if you if you know me, it's not a surprise because I love that kind of that Studio Ghibli esque world
mm.
of what if we got spirited away for an evening and we could buy the dreams we wanted to have, and how does that change us? And yeah, I don't know. It's just really reflective, and I think again, like this is a great way to experience literature and translation. I think it's incredibly readable while also matching some of what we look for as a Western audience. I think it's like a good pairing rather than being. I think sometimes like Eastern European lit can be so similar and yet so different at the same time that there's a little friction. And I think a lot of Latin American literature gorgeous, but it's like it's like an opposite parallel to what we do. And there's just something about this kind of Eastern that's just oof.
Yeah, and I love how magical realism really tackles
Mm,
grief so often.
yes.
It's such a safe place to explore such a deep emotion that we all experience in our life, but don't really have words for or language
Yeah.
sometimes. To be able to go somewhere in a cozy fantasy is so special. So this sounds like an incredible pick.
And cozy fantasy, like you're going to get a lot out of it. I would also threaten a lot of you that are habitual rereaders that this might make the list for the processing ability alone.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to switch gears again since we're having
Yeah.
so much fun today. I want to talk about The Sign for Home by Blair Fell. Have you read this book?
I It sounds familiar.
Okay.
Now I'm gonna have to like
All right.
desperately look it
So
up,
this
but
came out in
yes.
2022, and I actually went to my library and I was looking for something backlist that I could dig into. And I just want to say the marketing for this is odd. It was a very strange
Oh.
first cover. It has like a rom com cover and not a cover that I personally would pick up. But then they redid the cover for the paperback and it had a literary fiction kind of cover. So that is why I ended up picking it up. And so I just want to say that I feel like it's not a rom com. So don't be fooled by the cover. This is definitely more of a coming of age story as well. And this is the debut, but this author also is up for a Lambda Award. And he worked as an ASL interpreter for the deaf since 1993. He even attended a liberal arts university in the world for the deaf as a hearing special student. So he has a very long history with this, and it took him 8 years to write this story. It's about Arlo and his lived experience born deaf. He faced night blindness, and years passed where he gradually began to lose his sight. And by the time we are meeting this protagonist, his right eye is blind, his left eye is fading, and he relies on something called tactile signing. It's two-handed sign language that an interpreter has to do for him. So at 23, he's living with something called Usher syndrome type 1, and his life is really shaped by Jehovah Witness upbringing. That's what he grew up in, and his years spent under the watchful eye of a domineering uncle while leaving really just very little personal room for growth. And everything changes when Cyril, a gay man in his 40s, accepts a higher paying position at the Abilities Institute and is tasked with interpreting for Arlo. Now, I guess this is something that I discovered. Interpreters should not work alone for long periods, and Fell notes that any gig that lasts over an hour requires a team. It's mainly because your brain starts to miss things, so you can't necessarily keep up the pace with the sign language. And also, you're at greater risk of stress injuries. You know, you're using your hands so much, which is also something I never thought about. So Cyril has to play tag team with a strict woman from the church as the two are navigating translating in very different ways. And while Cyril is very intent on building a world of autonomy for his client, the other Force is reluctant for that to happen. So basically, when Arlo receives a college writing assignment, it stirs up a long buried memory and questions around someone he once knew and loved. And there's a romantic suspense element within the story. I just want to speak to the stylistic choices just for readers who want to be immersed in Arlo's world. Arlo's dialogue is rendered with dropped verbs and cadence that echoes the structure and the rhythm of ASL. So that's going to happen in those chapters, but it's very reminiscent, I think, of Sarah Novick's True Biz, which was really exceptional. If you haven't read it, pick up a paper copy so you can see all the signs. Fell is really guiding readers through the intricacies of signing, using italics, gentle explanations to help us see those signs, to help and understand it. I will say there is a lot of boy humor, okay? And the hormones are raging. And so if that bothers you, if you can't handle any boy humor, this might be a little bit. But the most intimate thing, I think, of all in the story is the tactile signing. It is such an intimate act to do with someone. And, it's all the feelings that you would have unspooling, like you're processing someone's emotions, you're sharing hands with someone. That was like standout, thing regarding intimacy that I think stood out even more than the boy humor. Anyways, Fella's amazing. He was a writer for Queer as Folk. He has 3 books under his belt, very funny, charismatic, so kind. And he did his own audiobook. And it's exceptional. Like sometimes with authors, you're like, please don't, but he's amazing. So definitely tune into the audiobook experience on this one.
I can't wait to pick this up. You had me with so many elements, but then when you're like, and there's tons of boy humor, I was like, guess I'm gonna have to.
You'll love it. You'll love it. It's so good.
I can't wait. I haven't read it, but I recognize the name Disco Witches of Fire Island.
Yes. Yeah, that's up for Lambda.
Loved that one.
That's the one that's up for the Lambda Award. Mm-hmm.
Incredible book. So I'm excited to see what he did with this, especially with how his past tied it all together. That's incredible. Okay, can't wait. He did not do the audio for Disco Witches of Fire Island.
Oh, he didn't. Okay.
That, of course, is our lovely friend Daniel Henning.
I love it. I love it.
In my world of how do I always end up with one of his books in my ears, I don't know, but my luck is worst luck to have, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Always incredible. Okay, well, my pivot for this one, how about a memoir?
Okay.
I'm known to be like the celebrity memoir reader, but this time we've got a straight up memoir. This is Cactus Country by Zoe Bossier. It's a striking literary memoir of gender fluidity, class, masculinity, and the American Southwest that captures the author's experience coming of age in a Tucson, Arizona trailer park. If that didn't get you, maybe the description will. This came out in 2024. Newly arrived in the Sonoran Desert, 11-year-old Zoe's world is one of giant beetles, thundering javelias, and gnarled Palo Verde trees. Goodness. With the family's move to Cactus Country RV Park, Zoe has been given a fresh start and a new, shorter haircut. Although Zoe doesn't have the words to express it, he experiences life as a trans boy. And in Cactus Country, others begin to see him as a boy, too. Here, Zoe spends hot days chasing shade and freight trains with an ever-rotating pack of sunburned desert kids, and nights fending off his own unique questions about the body underneath his baggy clothes. As Zoe enters adolescence, he must reckon with the sexism, racism, substance abuse, and violence endemic to the working class Cactus Country men he's grown close to, whose hard masculinity seems as embedded in the desert landscape as the cacti sprouting from the parched earth. In response, Zoe adopts an androgynous style and new pronouns, but still cannot escape what it means to live in a gendered body, particularly when a fraught first love destabilizes their sense of self. But beauty flowers in this desert too. Zoe persists in searching for answers that can't be found in Cactus Country, dreaming of a day they might leave the park behind to embrace whatever waits beyond. Equal parts harsh and tender, Cactus Country is an invitation for readers to consider how we find our place in a world that insists on stark binaries and a precisely rendered journey of self-determination that will resonate with anyone who's ever had to fight to be themselves. So again, that is Cactus Country by Zoe Bossier. I just wanted to take today to really think about my list. I know I mentioned this, but give you all a bit of everything with my slant on it. And I think this memoir does exactly that. I don't know. Queer stories are important. So many of us are fighting to just live every day. And I think this is a reflection of that, an amazing look at identity and experience. And, whether you need it because you relate to it or whether you want to become a more empathetic person, I think memoirs are a great way to experience a whole lot of different human conditions.
Yes, I completely agree. And I also love to do memoirs from people I don't know, or
Yes.
people that are not celebrities, or maybe celebrities in their own inner world, but someone I don't know of as a celebrity is always wonderful. And like, I love learning from other people. And that is truly the best, gateway drug to understanding anybody else's experience, I feel like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think while narrative nonfiction is finally blowing up in a way that we have more options with it, I think memoir were exactly that. Like my way to stomach nonfiction is
Hmm.
like the kindest way I can put it. And there were always celebrity memoirs ready and available, but now having so many beautiful looks at like I don't know, I think of an interview from several years ago with someone who found that, oh, they had like close to 100 siblings because their father was a donor and like, so,
Yeah.
lots of perspectives that you can gain from a memoir.
I completely agree. Well, I'm going to talk about a book that I haven't heard anybody talking about yet.
Oh, I can't
And
wait.
you're going to hear it first. Okay. This book is called With Friends Like You. It is written by Amy Chozick. It is coming out from Dutton. And this novel will not hit store shelves until July 21st. But I want to tell you about it because it's so exceptional. So, first of all, I do want to say that this story contains a traumatic birth story that could be disturbing to some readers. So, if you are a new mom, this one might be a hard one to deal with. But I think the themes that she's doing are very important. So, Amy Chozick is no stranger to the literary scene. She's an award winning journalist who penned the memoir Chasing Hillary. She's done a lot of what I would consider controversial or interesting women's stories. She's interviewed Lorena Bobbitt, she's interviewed Hillary Clinton. I'm trying to think, Stormy Daniels is another person that she has done an interview on. And her book, Chasing Hillary, was adapted into the HBO series The Girls on the Bus. So if you are a watcher of that, you will know who she is. So this story is her first debut thriller. It is propulsive. The plot is still reeling from a harrowing birth experience. Emily feels both physically and emotionally raw. Her attempts at recovery, including uncomfortable sessions with a pelvic floor therapist, leave her unsettled about how her body has changed through this bewildering process that looked nothing like the birth experience she thought she was going to get. Shouldering most of the newborn care, all while trying to keep her precarious job as a grant writer afloat, the family's strained finances put a dedicated nanny out of reach in Manhattan. Missing who she was before motherhood, she finds herself searching once again for a college roommate who has disappeared from her life. Emily shares, I could describe Daisy in a lot of ways, but I guess the simplest way is to say that she was my first love. Not in the romantic sense, but in the even more fleeting type that only happens among a certain type of adolescent girl. One magnetic, the other malleable. Even now, so many years later, I've never felt more spiritually and instantly platonically connected to another person than I did to Daisy. Emily and Daisy, once thick as thieves, since they were kids, have lost touch after she went down a slippery slope dancing at a strip club to pay for her tuition, and then everything went dark as the underbelly overtook her life. When effortless, glamorous Daisy suddenly reappears into her orbit, once again, she has plans to launch a wellness center of sorts in an empty high rise using her connections from her dark past, and she is looking for clients. Who better to fill those spots than the women from Emily's online mom forum? The two create an experience to fill in the gaps in these women's lives, offering IV vitamin infusions, Botox sessions, places to nap, stimulating communal activities for their kids. But as the friendships navigates this new partnership, old wounds resurface and the cracks in their friendship widen once again. Is Daisy truly the answer Emily's been seeking, or the Force unraveling her fragile world? And where has Daisy been all those years? Everyone has been calling Yesteryear the thriller of the year. I am telling you, it's not that. It's this book. I am officially
Really?
going on the record to say that I think that this is the next Gone Girl. And I say that, and it turns out that Gone Girl's movie team is adapting this. So I had those feelings. I think you are going to be so surprised by this book. It's gritty, it's confessional. There are aspects of this story that I've never heard anyone reference. Pelvic floor therapy is some of the most humiliating experiences that I've had. I know it's necessary work as a woman after birth, but it was so hard. And even when I interviewed Amy for this book, we were both like starting to cry because it is such a real and raw portrayal of what motherhood requires from our bodies and how we often feel left adrift after we have children. And even though I had my children over 20 years ago, that I was like, I didn't know that that wound was still there. You know what I mean? When you read something and you're like, wow, I'm thinking back on all of the ways that I felt a little bit abandoned, a little bit lost, a little unlike myself. And the way that she taps into this is genius. And I'm telling you, this is the next Gone Girl. Everybody should get this book. I really want to see Amy succeed. I believe she deserves it. And I will say that part of this story was inspired by a lot of the work that she did with her interview for Stormy Daniels. So if that's intriguing to you, get this.
I mean, number one, I say clip that. I'm calling you with it. I think you're right. I haven't read it yet, but now I'm dying to. And I'm like, okay. I'm
Read it
looking
today.
at.
Read it
I
today.
have it, and I'm like, I have it up on my screen. I'm like, I know the like 3 places I'm going first to try to get my hands on it early. But that sounds incredible. I mean, a Gone Girl comp will always get me.
But I never say that because that is something everyone, you know this too. Yeah. Everyone uses that. They're like, the next Gone Girl. And you're like, that wasn't it. There has not been a next Gone Girl for me personally.
No, there hasn't been.
No. And I think
there
this is
hasn't been. And because it's like, it's such an easy comp to make to get people to pick it up. But I know you mean it. And I think like those layers of trauma and also like you bringing up your own experience. I'm just thinking of like the conversation I had recently with Tessa Carroll from Brown Babies and Books about how like motherhood, no one's often saying like, how are you as just you? So like, you don't even understand that there's a part of yourself to grieve until later you're confronted with, oh, I have these feelings that I didn't know were ever there, let alone still there.
Yeah.
Because you're not given that chance.
And you have to think too, like 20 years ago, I don't know if people were talking about a lot of the things that, we were just kind of enduring. And even though I was like a mom blogger in 2004, I think we were the only ones like starting to publicly endure things instead of just like soldiering through and being like, that's just the way it is. And it's like, but why is it this way? Why
and even
are we
blogging
doing this?
Then, I'm sure your experience then versus if you were blogging like that experience now, so different with how much or how little you would share and how you'd slant it even. I mean,
totally. Yeah.
Oh, but this sounds incredible. I will be, I'm like, the moment we hang up, I'm like, I will be getting my claws around a copy of this. Oh yeah, I know. Boyfriend's going to be thrilled. He's like, what are we reading now?
Right.
Like, hey, you're going to be happy about this
He will like this book.
I know he will. Oh, he loved One's Company, by the way.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
And then he did indeed start watching Three's Company. Okay, well, I was going to save thrillers for last, but I'm going to bump them up because if there's something your boy's always going to love, it's a thriller. Because as the one you just described, that kind of like interpersonal, like this is bad friendship or weird friendship thriller. I love that thriller is so expansive. It could mean anything and you could get a delight from any of them, or you could find your niche and you can go down the rabbit hole of, oh, I like family thrillers. I like to be in the neighborhood. I like a psychological, like you can pick so many things. Or you can get the really fun ones that pull in so many elements of all the different subgenres in the space. But the one I'm picking is one that I still am thinking about, even though I just recently read it for the first time. And this is, I think, the oldest book on my list. This one's from back in 2023. It was on my book picks then. I didn't get around to it until the end of 2025. And I'm still kicking myself about that. It's The September House by Carissa Orlando. I just needed a chance and an excuse to talk about it, because if you haven't read it yet, please let me force you into it. And if you already know it's incredible, don't worry. I have some others I'm going to sneak in as a recommendation. But The September House came out in September of 2023. And it's kind of a haunted house story. A woman is determined to stay in her dream home, even after it becomes a haunted nightmare, in a compulsively readable, twisty, and layered debut novel. When Margaret and her husband Hal bought the large Victorian house on Hawthorne Street for a surprisingly reasonable price, they couldn't believe they finally had a home of their own. They then discovered the hauntings. Every September, the walls drip blood, the ghosts of former inhabitants appear, and all of them are terrified of something that lurks in the basement. Most people would flee. Margaret is not most people. Margaret is staying. It's her house. But after 4 years, Hal can't take it anymore, and he leaves abruptly. Now he's not returning calls, and their daughter Catherine, who knows nothing about the hauntings, arrives, intent on looking for her missing father. To make things worse, September has just begun, and with every attempt Margaret and Catherine make at finding Hal, the hauntings grow more harrowing, because there are some secrets the house needs to keep. Look, I think this was brilliant. I think it was fun, and I think like thriller that plays with horror, but it wasn't really horror. It was definitely more thriller. To me, is so exciting. It's a literal haunted house story, and yet it's so unique. And I think everyone should pick this up. I didn't find it to be spooky, and I think it could be a very lovely avenue if you're already in the thriller space and you want to try horror. I think this is a great dip your toe in the water. At this time, I also want to recommend I Want You More by Swan Huntley. It's queer, it's dark and twisty, it's about fame and lies and obsession. Loved it. And then, of course, two that I wanted to shout out that have been covered to death recently. The Compound by Ashlyn Rawl was incredible. If you love like a competition reality show, I thought it was like simultaneously, I was like simultaneously nothing happened and everything happened. And I was sold, so I would feel remiss if I didn't bring it up. But I know it was mentioned in season 2. Like I know it's been around, but if you somehow missed it, The Compound, incredible. And Julie Chan is Dead by Lian Zhang. Loved that one as well. Another great one. So like just, go for it. And then to continue my thriller rambling, How to Survive a Horror Story by Mallory Arnold was like just a fun little like kind of popcorn. And then Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. So covering all of my bases, I tried to like find y'all a little bit of everything thriller wise. And again, all of the titles mentioned in the episode will be in the show notes or on libbylife.com/booklounge. Thrillers, what won't they do?
I know. It's amazing. And, September House, I feel like the reason why I haven't gotten to that yet was there was like a huge influx of haunted house books that all came out at the same time. I needed like a breath between them, and they were starting to overlap a little bit in my brain. So I was like, that one will be for another day, because I feel like there was just like 3 or 4 haunted house books, or something with a fantasy and a house being like the main character. It's like, okay, I really need a little bit of breath between them. But now that makes me excited that, now I've had a little bit of a break.
You're absolutely right. And I think this book got the most raw deal of that time, because absolutely the same thing happened to me. I think at this time would have also been How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. Then there's the other one that's definitely more thriller about the girl whose father was a serial killer. And they came out, the September House and that one that I'm so sorry I can't remember the title of, came out at almost exactly the same time. And like, so it was all right around there. And you're like, another book about what's going on? And this one is the only one that has like none of the trappings or through. Like, this to me is like the Practical Magic, the movie, kind of like when you think of that energy of just it's a big serious thing, but it's so light. It's like a Muppet version of a haunted house story. Respectfully.
Perfect. I love that. I love that for people who need that.
Right, and like I don't know how best to describe the energy of it because
Yeah.
it's not like any of them. And I think why I had to bring it up today was after I finally read it, I was so mad at myself that I didn't read it then because
Yeah.
of all of both of the books that I mentioned, incredible books for Haunted House that came out, I think, at the same time. But like this one hits my need for something unique and different. And that's why I'm like, darn it.
I love this. I love it.
So read it, Amy. You gotta.
Okay. It's on my list now. And, you know, you're going to
Perfect.
keep me busy too. I have to wait until after summer
I
reading
have
guide,
to.
but then I'll be back at it. I'll be back
Oh,
at
I
it.
know. I know I can't give you a single book
Don't talk to me
for
about
the next
books.
like business week,
No,
but
yeah.
like 3 business
Don't say a
months.
word about a book I might like. Don't say it.
I'll zip it.
Okay. Well, my next pick is If I Ruled the World by Amy Du Bois Barnett. This is already slated for a Hulu adaptation. It came out this year. I just want to talk about the author for just a minute. She's the first African American woman to helm a mainstream magazine, and it is drawing on her rich life as an editor to bring readers a behind the scenes past to the 1990s, where a 29-year-old woman finds her voice and place in the world in this very grown up coming of age story that is going to be a massive hit, I believe, for fans of The Devil Wears Prada or Queenie. Those are the 2 comps I'm providing for you. The story's spicy start brings Nikki to its center. She's a woman in the thick of the aftermath of being coerced into a sexual relationship by a powerful colleague. And when she bravely reports him to HR, she's met with a shocking twist. Other women are coming forward to share similar stories, but instead of support, Nikki is scapegoated and blamed for the downfall of this man. So Alonzo, the man in question, is not only connected, but he's very vengeful. And his menacing warning is, you had better hope our paths don't cross again, haunts Nikki as she navigates the tight-knit, cutthroat world of the late 1990s print media scene, where reputations are easily ruined and alliances shift overnight. Alonzo is well connected and he is determined to make her pay, which leads her to take a 6-month trial position at this magazine called Sugar. And it's a struggling hip hop music and lifestyle magazine that desperately needs someone to turn profit for them. But what she doesn't know, and what we didn't know, is that after accepting the position, is that 6-month timeline really isn't just for her, but the publication is going to fold as well. So she is the only person to save it. So if you're the kind of reader who appreciates a true insider's perspective on things like magazine publishing, this book delivers in spades. Barnett invites us right into that chaos where Nikki and her colleagues are hustling to book up-and-coming celebrities for splashy covers, place bets on which indie artists are going to break it big, and brainstorm the next cultural wave months before it becomes mainstream. Although through that whole experience, Nikki is also undergoing her own personal transformation, trying to kind of figure out who she is as an editor, honing her voice, making it distinct, making and building a following. I think that this book did not shy away from some of the complexities of the hip hop world, especially in the 1990s. Not that it's maybe changed that much, but I think we are starting to recognize through maybe some documentary films or news clips and starting to understand that space itself. And as, you know, Nikki goes deeper into the music scene, like interviewing stars and attending those parties and witnessing the real power dynamics at play, she's really confronted with hard truths about representation. And also as a Black woman leading, I think it's really a great and compelling character study. I will say Nikki is messy, very messy. And she makes a lot of chaotic choices, like in love and mistakes at work and all of those kinds of things. And that's where the comp for Queenie, I think, comes into play. But I think that it's an honest exploration. And I think if you're okay with mess and someone who's, you know, trying to find themselves, the ending is quite gratifying. The audiobook is excellent. And I loved learning about Amy's experience as someone who led a publication. She was like an editor for, I believe, Ebony Teen People. And she has like this huge, like illustrious career. I mean, just a few weeks ago, I saw her like hanging out backstage with Zendaya. Her husband is an actor. And yeah, she has just a very like interesting life, but also she's in her 50s trying something new. This is her fiction debut. And I'm excited to talk to her. We're doing her interview for the summer author series next week. And I'm really excited to hear, what does it take for someone in their 50s to, do something new? So I just want to pitch that really good because I really like her. I like her style. And I think she's going to be someone to watch.
No, I mean, that sounds incredible to me. I am such a sucker for that kind of like, I also think the keyword is messy. I think messy is a little different than unlikable
Right. No, she's likable.
when like providing that to readers. But I'm such a sucker for like that. I was just smiling the whole time. I'm like, oh yeah, it's so different from what I usually choose, but it's exactly like my speed, and I can't wait to add that to the list because we need that good break. And I can see the adaptation as you were describing. I'm like, oh, I know why Hulu picked this up. I see the adaptation happening.
I mean, she like very like at the back half, like in her author's note, was like, I was writing this with adaptation pretty much in mind. And I feel like she was like, here was the music. This is what she is wearing, and if you're really into like details, especially with the music and stuff, it was just throwing me back. Obviously, as a Gen X reader, I really loved like going back and revisiting this through her experiences. And also like, I'm really curious, like how hard they have to bet on people 6 months later. What if that person is a flop, right? And you have to pick them for the cover of your magazine, or they get in trouble. Like that would be something like the news changes every single day. Now, I don't know if you could get away with it the way that we can now, where people are just getting smeared every single day, right?
Yeah, I was going to say it was probably easier in the 90s, but the stakes felt so much higher because, right, like that had a print run. There was dollars behind that where like, oh, well, that, that cost time, but it didn't cost money. And,
Yeah, for sure.
Well, my final recommendation, which, this is another suite of recommendations for y'all. How about some graphic novels? Because who would I be if not? See, this is how I still like stay true to always being in my lane while also giving new things. My next like main pick that you'll get the full description of is Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Anise Floney. Just this came out in October. It's a gripping and lushly illustrated tale of love and lies set between 1930s Chicago and New York's criminal underground. Perfect for fans of manga like Banana Fish and readers of graphic novels like Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, who are looking for adult LGBTQIA plus fiction. So, Chicago, 1930s, Jules Tivoli is a penniless Italian immigrant doing odd jobs trying to make ends meet. A twist of fate causes him to cross paths with Adam, a kingpin in Chicago's criminal underworld who sees something in Jules that nobody else does, something special. Under Adam's wing, Jules becomes somebody and falls in love hard with the man who made him. But after an FBI crackdown, Adam and Jules must flee to New York to escape being caught in the ensuing chaos. In New York, Jules' Italian heritage gains him access, recognition, and power in the Cosa Nostra crime family. As he becomes more important in a city where Adam can't seem to catch a break, he meets Eufrasio, a handsome, violent, and ambitious new partner who insists that Adam is holding Jules back. But Jules would be nothing without Adam, wouldn't he? Torn between his past and his future, a sudden betrayal forces Jules to find a way to protect his love and prove his loyalty if he can even manage to make it out alive. That is Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Anais Floney. I'm sorry, queer historical fiction graphic novel? Sign me up.
Oh my gosh.
It's got a stunning, unique art style, which again, I'm sat for that. It's got a heart-wrenching story. I'm done and dusted. Like, also something about like a 30s crime syndicate between Chicago and New York. Like, I don't know what they were feeding y'all Gen Xers, but like
good stuff, I'm sure.
Right. For me in the 90s, I feel like there was always like hearkening to noir fiction. And so I feel like there's something that just like little me is really drawn to in this. And it's gorgeous. I'd also like to mention, if you're looking for other graphic novel debuts, Homebody by Theo Parrish. Their debut is an intimate and defiantly hopeful graphic memoir. So 2 for the price of 1, you get a memoir and graphic. about the journey one non-binary person takes to find home within themselves. I had this on my book picks back when it released, if I'm remembering correctly. So just lovely to be able to like pop that back up in a moment like this. And then, of course, I'm a sucker for a good title. Fitting Indian by Jyoti Chand, and art by Tara Anand. It was a 2025 debut teen graphic novel from social media influencer Jyoti Chand. And it follows one girl's journey navigating high school and her mental health within a traditional South Asian family. So 3 excellent graphic novel picks there. But yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
that sounded so cool.
debuts happen in everything. Like that.
Yes.
That was the hardest part about this was like,
I know.
what
I tried
lane
to like
do I
cast a
drive
wide
in?
net too. I'm sure
Yeah.
like it is like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my final pick
Yes,
is
I'm
an
excited
indie
for this
published book. And I don't read a lot of indie published books, but this author is a physician and she reached out about our show. And I was so glad I read it. And I cannot tell you how much I devoured this story. It's called Harvesting Rosewater by Paria Hasari. It's a midlife story, and the debut pulls readers into the daily lives of children that are growing up after the Islamic Revolution and through the Iran-Iraq War, from hiding in basements during air raids to navigating the new hijab requirements to watching their education transforming before their very own eyes. So just as we are settling into that intimacy of their day, a family tragedy strikes, and Farah carries the weight of her involvement deep within her heart for years to come. Now, 40 years later, she's living in America. She's in the thick of a lot of midlife changes. She's raising a transgender child. She's, navigating life as a doctor with like a lot of insurance bureaucracies, things that are pulling her away from the heart of her work. And she's also had a fresh divorce that happens really mostly off page. This is not a divorce book. I just want to say that for people who don't like that. Anyways, as she's navigating those highs and lows and starts to see her family kind of morphing into some places that are unexpected, she starts to discover herself and discover a new life with her child. But nothing really in her life can be resolved until she starts to confront the tragedy that she left behind as a child. As the women life freedom movement sparks protests on American soil, she has to confront her past to begin the actual healing. I think that this book is so gorgeous for people who feel caught between cultures or have a deep desire to understand the journey of others. I think Hasari gives us a protagonist who is embodying that ache of leaving, the pain of staying, and the triumph of finally speaking into that. And this book is perfect for people who liked books like Mad Honey or Slanting Towards the Sea is another great debut example of this. I also want to mention that she is raising a transgender child, has written a memoir about that experience for parents that are looking for a place where maybe they need a little bit of guidance. And she's showing the struggles that she had even as a physician. And now she works with transgender youth and helps them through that journey. And I think she's just a really special ally to the community. And I just want to really put this in the hands of anyone, especially if you like the stationery shop and things like that. This is inspired by her own childhood as her time growing up in Iran. So I highly, highly recommend it.
Oh, that sounds incredible. And hey, we love a random indie find. And excited to say, available in Libby, all these books you can borrow. They are linked in the notes.
I know. I looked it up. I was like, is it there? And I told her, I was like, I'm going to see if I can get this book on here, because I am telling you, I am shocked she didn't get a traditional deal. This is better than a lot of the books that I screened that did get traditional deals, especially with her illustrious background as a physician, and that this is her very lived experience. But,
as you were describing it, I'm like, what?
Why?
How did
let's make it a success, and maybe she gets that traditional deal on top of everything else.
I mean, we love to see it, but also love that, the deals are still happening. We want the growth. We want the boom for everyone. So, well, Amy, thank you for sharing some amazing debuts with us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, always. Hope y'all are ready to see Amy locked in for the season, because she's one of my favorite people to talk to, and incredible book recs always. And I love getting to take you from your show to do something on mine that you don't get to do on your show.
It's so fun.
Well, listeners, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Book Lounge by Libby, where we gave you some dazzling debut recommendations. If you haven't checked it out already, make sure you check out the first half of this episode from on Monday. And of course, do all those things like comment, subscribe, make sure you're following so you don't miss next week when we are diving into historical fiction. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, happy reading! You can sample and borrow the books from today's episode in the Libby app, or if you're a librarian, find them for purchase in Overdrive Marketplace. Book Lounge by Libby is a proud Evergreen Podcast signature program. Explore more amazing shows at evergreenpodcasts.com. This podcast is produced and recorded by me, Joe Skelly, with editing by Andrew Alonzo. Our theme music is High Five by Rex Banner, used with permission. Book Lounge by Libby is presented by the Libby app. Learn more at libbylife.com/booklounge.